Strong. Let's go down and talk about, well, Donald Trump. Absolutely fascinating. Yes, last week to see that he was found guilty on all 34 charges of falsifying documents to cover up an alleged affair with Stormy Daniels. He still denies that that affair ever actually took place. She says feels that she's been proved right after all her claims, even though, of course, she once wrote a signed affidavit saying she hadn't had an affair with Donald Trump, and apparently took 130k for that. But there we are. But Donald Trump has become the first US president to actually be convicted of a crime. I'm never quite sure why people make such a big deal of that, on the basis that clearly Richard Nixon should have been convicted of a crime, for Watergate. But they chose not to prosecute him and chose to pardon him. I mean, so he's not, he's not the first president or former president to have convicted, to have committed a crime.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak, of course, has committed two. I think while he was in office, he had the seatbelt fine, plus he had the COVID party one.
Yes, I think there's felonies and but there we are. Right, okay, fair point. Right, anyway, Donald Trump has said that he is okay with being jailed, but warned that his followers may reach breaking point if he is sentenced to prison. So what is likely to happen when he is sentenced next week? Let's talk to Steve Gill. He's a former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush administrations. Good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Well, look, it's certainly, just extraordinary scenes across America, really, over that conviction. And what has been absolutely fascinating is that looking at what's likely to happen next, because he could, in theory, face spending the rest of his life behind bars. But it's very unlikely he'll be sent to prison, isn't it?
Yeah, almost certainly not going to be sent to prison, certainly before the election takes place. You mentioned the 34 charges. They are based upon each bookkeeping, each check that was written to pay the lawyer for legal fees. The bookkeeper himself says, I paid it as legal fees because we were paying our lawyer for legal fees. The jury couldn't even say what the crime was. They just checked the box for guilty, 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 never identified the crime. The prosecutor never identified the crime. Paying off a porn star would not be a crime. The bookkeeping entries, if they were incorrect, would be a federal misdemeanor that the prosecutor has contorted into a felony, and the misdemeanors are barred by the statute of limitations. This thing
and indeed, the federal court had decided not to push forward with this. They decided not to go ahead with these charges.
And the state court decided not to go ahead with it. Bragg ran for office, the DA, saying he was going to get Trump. There are at least 36 bases to overturn this on appeal, and it will be overturned on appeal. But what the judge, who's corrupt, had donated to Biden organization.
He donated, I think, a total, wasn't it, about $35? I mean, there's, the thing. Look, here's the thing. I'm always fascinated by whether Democrats or Republicans who come on this show who say, "Oh, isn't it awful because this is a completely biased, justice system." But that's how you set it up. People run for office on a political ticket to be judges and to be district attorneys. You've created that system. You have political appointees to the Supreme Court and every other court. This is the system you've got, and now you're all complaining about it.
Well, there are standards of ethics, though, that a judge, a prosecutor, a lawyer has to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And in this case, the judge made numerous donations, some of them small, in violation
all of them small.
And his daughter has made millions of dollars helping Democrats in this election cycle, having worked for Joe Biden in the past.
So he should have recused himself and said, look, I've clearly got a bias on this. It's not appropriate. But either way, there were 12 jury members. They decided he was guilty. Now, I've always been of the view, look, he had, what he had done, various things he's being charged with, I'm he's got every right for courts to bring these cases, let juries decide. But I also think that the timing is clearly politicised. But this is the only case that's coming to court likely before November the 5th and the election date. Now, interestingly,
Keep in mind, by the way, that the jury only judged based on what they were told.
That's how
and
courts
the jury
work.
Was kept from having information that was exonerating Trump, including what the federal election laws were. And there were two lawyers on this jury. They know better than all the outrageous unconstitutional things that the judge let in, that they were told. They know better. They should be disbarred for their role in finding him guilty rather than hanging the jury.
Wow. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, lock her up just becomes, everyone's to blame. It is fascinating, that Trump supporters, not accepting the outcome of elections, not accepting the outcome of jury verdicts. And what do they accept? I mean, they'll accept the outcome if Trump wins, as I'm going to guess he is going to on November the 5th right now. But it's interesting. Donald Trump has said he's okay, in his words. He said, I'm okay with it. He said, if he does end up in prison. Of course, that would make him more of a martyr. And given that this is clearly a highly politicised justice system, I mean, the Democrats were cheering with glee that he got charged, cheering with glee that he got convicted. They think it's a game changer. Judging by the claims of Eric Trump, one of his sons, that actually they've got $200 million more in donations in just a few days after the felony conviction, that doesn't look like it is working out well for the Democrats.
And when you look at the polls, particularly in battleground states, Trump has been seeing his lead grow over Joe Biden. And in some states, like Virginia, he's moved 3 or 4 points ahead of where he was before the conviction. I think the Democrats are going to rue the day they did this because it is clearly politicized. It is clearly lawfare. And I think they just reelected Donald Trump.
Do you know what? I completely agree with you on that. And I'm not somebody who holds a candle for him. But my thing is when you get the likes of Robert De Niro and others turning up and just saying, it's awful, this cannot be allowed to happen. You know what? If Donald Trump is so awful, if he's such a threat to democracy, he's such an awful man and so blatantly obviously an awful human being, why cannot pretty much anyone else beat him? That's the thing. If you're apparently brilliant and popular and fabulous president and running again, Joe Biden, if he can't beat this awful, awful human being, what does that say?
Because I think people are looking ultimately at policy rather than personality. And whether you like him or not, whether you have a bone to pick with Donald Trump or not, his policies were better, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on world peace, whether it's on security.
It's immigration. Security of the borders is the number one issue for his fans, isn't it?
And securing the borders, as it is in London, covers many issues. It's national security, it's economic security. The flood of illegals carries a lot of other issues with it. So when you look at the umbrella of illegal immigration, there's a lot of issues under that really do affect people in their day-to-day lives.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Steve Gill, former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush administrations.